What's good, people? It's your boy, Icarus Gray. And this is Gray Area Anime, the most wonderful podcast of your day. Kirby says, hi. It's dangerous to go alone, so I choose you guys. Welcome back to another episode. We're sorry that we left you this week. My birthday was last week, so I was trying to work out scheduling conflicts and all that other good stuff. But we're back, and I say we're back because we are back. The producer, the lovely producer, the prima diva, is also back.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a good day.
And we've been watching anime, of course, which that's the whole thing of what we do. I get it, but yeah. So we've been watching some stuff. We were really interested in. We were only We were only able to catch up on two of the animes that we've been currently keeping up with, which in Talk Opt and The World's Finest Assassin gets reincarnated in another world as an aristocrat.
Finest indeed.
So, needless to say, the one that I think is the most polarizing for us is The World's Finest Assassin gets reincarnated in another world as an aristocrat. Good God. TWFAG, no. Even that doesn't work.
No.
But
we call it assassin. It just is what it is.
Yeah, the assassin, another world aristocrat.
Yeah.
Assassins.
It's assassin. What it is.
Aristocrats.
The aristocratic assassin.
I don't know, but either way, we've been watching it, and to say the least is that it is very polarizing, and we have been trying to figure out a tone in total. What are your thoughts on it?
Overall, I think it's interesting. I'm just wondering where they're gonna go with it exactly. Like whether or not this is the only portion of the world we're going to see is the human trafficking side, or if there's going to be more included in there in the overall world building for the assassin to kind of fight, especially depending on where the hero is going to be found.
What other aspects would you personally like for them to dive into with the show?
I wish that we could have seen him as grow as a merchant, because I thought that would be entertaining. But I understand that the story took us elsewhere.
And are there any like bigger issues with where they were taking us that you personally have with it?
The biggest issue was the aspects of like the way that they show the human trafficking and the kind of the exploitation of the kids, the young girls. That's a bit much for me, only because of like how frequently it tends to be used in anime to show a villain. It's just a lot sometimes. It's overwhelming. And
then outside of the obvious issues of human trafficking in and of itself, what's the biggest problem that you have with the illustration, or not the illustration, but the overuse, I would say, of that medium?
So the biggest for me is the level of fan servicing that seems to come along with it. Like they linger on certain things, and you really see the fear in the girls' faces and the ugliness of the men, and like it's kind of too much. I feel like you can dispel those things without having to make it into something that's, that on the overtone or the overall tone seems to be saying that this is a bad thing, but it's almost like it enjoys, like the storytellers enjoy these portions also, and they are creating spaces for people who enjoy this stuff too. And it's kind of disgusting when you think about it like that. But I am not a mangaka, so I don't know what their processes are. I'm also not Japanese, so I don't know how that correlates with their cultural views on like abusing children, or well, I guess to me that's what it is. But what their cultural stands are on that aspect of storytelling of how to go about, describing those kinds of things. So I wouldn't necessarily say they should replace it. I just know personally as a viewer, I'm going to have to make some changes in terms of how I consume and what kind of anime I consume, because it doesn't align with me personally as a woman, as a, with my personal beliefs and views and values. I can't.
Because it is something that I've heard from other otakus that is a rampant issue. I know in animes or even in mangas, they'll have like the girl that gets groped or something on the train or bus or whatever. And that is a real problem and a real issue.
Exactly.
I also know that the not the underbelly, but like you said, they do have media that leans to that that thought or the this is okay, or creating these images or movies or scenarios is what I'm really trying to go for. These scenarios where somebody is getting groped on a bus or whatever the case may be. And I think that that's a huge issue. I don't know if the anime did it that way. I mean, I know that we're 6 episodes in, but the only time that we've currently even dealt with it is episode 1 and now episode 6, which would be twice. Because there was no issue of that with the second girl. There was no issue of that. She was cast out by her family because she couldn't eat, and she was about to get eaten by wolves.
I'm just talking about like so they established that level of normalcy for the dad to examine the son in the way that he did, so that it would be okay when he did it to the girl. And I get it. Still doesn't mean it's not like mildly like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but I don't think we should make a distinction. Or are you making a distinction and connecting that to child trafficking and is it something that's trying to, you feel as a viewer, make us docile or calmer to when the other stuff comes in? I guess is what I'm trying to separate.
I think because there's no difference in terms of tone between the two. Like there's a difference in terms of intention, because obviously it could have been even more uncomfortable and the dad could have been the one examining her, but she's not his servant. She's his son's servant. Mm-hmm. So it makes more sense story-wise that he would do it. But it doesn't make it any less what are we doing here? What's really happening? Okay, but because there's still those moments, right?
True, but what I guess I'm trying to make a clear-cut distinction between the tonal setting that they have and then the aggressiveness of those 2 episodes at this point. Are you, because that speaks to a different level of uncomfortability in terms of you as a viewer and what you're ingesting, or I guess I'm asking at that point, because does the first episode and episode 6 become bigger blemishes in how you're watching because of those moments that are clearly not the same?
Okay. I think that for me as a viewer, given the tone of all the episodes, right? If I'm taking them all into consideration, not just the physical examinations, but also the jokes made between him and his presumed big sister, or all these other things. There's a clear sexual tone all throughout this show. It's not diminished just because one particular setting has it between a human trafficker and a victim, and the other one is between a mother who wants to breastfeed her son, or a son and his presumed big sister. That doesn't, while the settings might be different, the tone is still kind of there. So
no, true, but I guess what I'm trying to get to at this point is, earlier as we talked about it and thinking about it as we're talking about it, I was going through my head and I was like, well, there's only the first episode where they're breaking the ring where nothing happens, and then this episode where it's clear what was happening. Mm-hmm. And then with the onsets of the joke and then the body stuff, which again made us both uncomfortable. I guess I'm trying to ask, is it more amplified because of what it is that, like, as a woman, does that make it more amplified for you in terms of your viewing, like fan service in general? And I've talked about fan service in my general, like, if it's something that's like coy and embarrassing between kids because that's how kids would act, good use, funny, I get it, but when it's like, why are we, and they have these shots, so I'm not like discrediting anything, but I'm also just trying to understand more, so that way, like, it's kind of a growing and a learning experience in the sense, like I said, because I just throw it off to the side no matter what kind of fan service it is, because I know at this point that an abundance of fan service is typically just that culture, unless you're going for the slice of life aspect. And not to say this slice of life lacks fan service, but majority of the time in slice of life is more realistic to the means, or at least they try to be when they're good. let me clarify on that. But I also kind of want to pick this up because there's just something about this anime that we're still trying to figure out. Mm-hmm. And with that, I don't want it to be like this uncomfortable ride of something that we're watching. If there's like, if it's evoking too much, like if the imagery is evoking too much negativity and it's not, and it's clouding the plot, then it's not good.
I think the story is still interesting enough in a sense that I still want to know what his motives are, that I'll at least see it through to a particular point. But I think the bigger question for me, or a bigger question that I wish I knew the answer to or knew how to find out, is because I can make this comparison to any other form of media too, right? Like how do the stories that we tell actually impact the things that we expose? Like, is there an actual correlation between times that this has been used and like a diminished number of gropings on a bus? Like, do we actually see a change in culture, or is it just exasperating the problem? So that's overall, I think from that perspective, that's something that I'd be interested in. But from the story perspective, I feel like we talked about this before on the show. Like I'm pretty certain we've had the same conversation before where I was like, a little too much for me. But from the story perspective, I am still interested enough in the main character to find out, is he just using these girls? Like, is he just using these people like mentally and ready to discard them at the, drop of a hat? Or is there some part of him that's actually going to make a connection with these people to the point that he cares? Like right now, I can't, but again, I think that goes to the tone that you mentioned of like us not being able to trust anything that we see. Like that's the world of an assassin. Everybody is duplicitous. Everybody has their own, motives, unless you are being brainwashed by the aristocratic assassin who makes you love him. So like it just, I'm interested in seeing where it goes. I just know that I'm starting to develop, I think, a line for myself as a viewer.
No, I get that. I guess I'm diving into, because there are, and people use this so incorrectly, and I'm just sick of this red flag stuff, but there are, the use of the word trigger, triggers and red flags and everything else. I think with this anime, and the reason I even wanted to discuss all of this is because of how polarizing it seems to be, where like in another anime where human trafficking in that aspect, again, like I said, in 2 episodes was not involved, we would be introduced to fan service of some kind, especially like with the, I ate the fruit of evolution or whatever that thing is. But there's more laughter there, and I don't know if it's because it's funny or at least, or or
even that's
while I do think that media could probably handle these things better, I don't think that the cap is ever going to go back in Pandora's box. I also don't think that. So in knowing that, then I wonder how to mitigate all of these things that are kind of going on. So like if you're changing a again, with certain the way in which we would present, right? So if it's a different showing of intimacy, right? The problem sometimes with anywhere at this point, I think most TV shows, is there's an over sexualization at earlier and earlier in age. Given that we've spoken before, but shonen and shoujo mangas are for 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, in that, like, I'm wondering how, and I guess because the code hasn't been cracked or anyone hasn't tried to crack the code on how do you show intimacy in a way that is not false. So the biggest issue is when you're over sexualized, you live in a fairy tale world. You live in a fairy tale world where you think that, you know, your stepsister and stepmom are trying to get at you every 3 seconds. Or, you know, you live in a world where you're sheltered from all of those things. And then for whatever reason, intimacy seems like a difficulty, or at least it's presented as a difficulty. So with that in mind, I'm wondering just how we like kind of change the landscape, because this is something that if you're going to watch anime, no matter what your personal beliefs are, there are a lot of things that you have to deal with in terms of watching anime. And I think that this anime has literally the gambit of everything that you could possibly deal with in an anime. The start of the anime is very tame in a certain sense, in that there, you know, it's old guy, young girl, and there's nothing sexually overt about them. I don't recall any fan service really in the first episode.
Not between them.
But they were setting up, you know, how good of an assassin he was. The fact that she was expendable, so maybe that's why they didn't focus too much on it. But you know, they presented themselves a little bit differently than they do in the following episodes. And the uphill battle, or the reason I'm even talking about this, is because I think that people have to try harder. And I don't know if they're going to try harder in the medium, especially not with its current popularization.
Well, yeah,
with Netflix,
I mean, it's
and
very
other places.
much ruled by by the culture of the people that watch, right? And I think that,
and it's not a lot of people, even in. And I was gonna say that earlier. It's not as many as we like, because we love something, and when we love it, we give it way more credence than what is actually given
people who do,
to
so
that. Like that's all we're saying. Like for them, and even when I've heard people speak about it, like now the problems are still problems. I ain't saying that that's not a problem,
of course,
but it's way less of a cultured huge thing than what it is here. Like the reason they have the term neat, otaku, and so on and so forth is because they are shunned in a certain way. The same way that overweight people are shunned in the way that they do that in terms of like touching on people. Oh, as my alarm goes off. Good gosh. Outside sounds. So...
And that, I mean, but that presents a certain aspect of it too, is when we talk about crowd consumption, when we talk about who it is that's actually consuming this, you know, a large, or at least as far as we know, following is of course here. So, or at least a large enough following that there's like an overwhelming amount of it on Netflix now that wasn't available before. It's grown steadily over the years in type, in diverse story, and many very, very dark ones. So, like, as well as cute ones. I'm not saying that there's not a level of balance, but I am saying that because they are beholden to their consumers, that does also present another aspect to the question of like, okay, because I know personally I'm probably in the minority and I'm okay with that. Like I'm probably in the minority of the type of viewer that's, you know, I wouldn't be a tastemaker because I'm not looking for a whole lot of fan servicing. Every now and again it's interesting, it's funny, it's fine, but for the most part, like even that is so overwhelming in terms of its oversaturation to me now. Like every single episode of anything that we have watched has some level of it, to the point that I'm like, what is happening? I mean, that I have to escape with how, my next life as a villainess or something like that to kind of like
but I mean,
balance
even
it
in
out.
that, like it's more so if it's an innuendo game. So say you're more cerebral and like, no, I don't need the outright fan service, but is the cerebral aspect of it still not too much there?
When you say cerebral,
so
for example, with the dude and his sister.
No. I'm saying like with villainous particularly. The big thing that's funny and hee-hee-han about it is everybody is always saying things to her that are clearly sexual.
Intellectual comedy is great for me.
And so what I'm saying is
funny.
that not like, to me, on that same level? Like if you're a person like you, is that not like still like it's just, it's a metaphoric,
it's the same reason that
service.
I can appreciate Shakespeare. Right? Like, I don't have to
Which
see
again,
anybody
like
grope anyone else for me to be like, oh, that's fan servicing. No, like, I can hear them talk about, like, I'm not leaving you alone with my sister, dude. Like, I don't care if you're engaged. And that's hilarious to me because, again, it's like,
I'm not talking about, I don't like, because that's more of
I know, I'm just using
that's
it as
melodrama. That's a melodrama staple. I'm talking about the whole, like,
we should run away
who
together.
I'm talking about. Like, I'm talking about Mary. Who I'm talking. Like, I'm not talking about nobody else. I'm talking about Mary specifically.
Okay,
and like, and I'm asking this. I'm only playing other side advocate.
Good, well said there.
Because to address these things, I mean, as a filmmaker, as an actress, as all these things that you do, this is the field. Not the anime field, but I'm saying like in terms of these are the milestones and things that you are addressing, even in the upcoming series about relationships and everything. You're dealing with that from the Christian perspective in that regard, and tackling it in a way that says everything does not have to feel all holier than thou in the way that people keep saying that Christian content makes them feel, because I know who's gonna win in the end and all that stuff or whatever. But at the same time, you're still tackling the things that us growing up felt like we needed to know. And not even just felt like, know by truth that we needed to know. Right. Because the problem of all of these things is we didn't talk about them. Exactly. And so, the connection point I make, I guess, between this episode and I guess this episode is a whole, I don't know what this episode is, but the connecting point between all these different things is I've always told people the thing that's not funny, but disheartening to me is the use of the joke of the uncle, the black uncle specifically, who's always asking who's related to whoever. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's not, and that's so uncomfortable for me.
It is. It's uncomfortable to me too.
So many different things, personally and not personally, that I've dealt with in regards to that stuff. But that is something that is, again, used. As a joke. While it's not but it's not. That's what I'm saying.
Right. It's not funny.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, and so in all of these different mediums, and I think that's what's the most interesting about this series is you don't know how exactly it's making you feel, because in the first couple of episodes, like we were saying, it seemed like they just had this tone issue. Yeah. And then as you get a little bit further into it, you're like, okay, is this setting up? Like, how am I supposed to feel? Right. And I think that maybe that's something that's an expert thing to do if you want your person to be kind of like, what am I supposed to feel?
Well, I think you're right in the terms of it being a potentially expert thing to do, because it can point the viewer back at themselves, right? Like, it's kind of like that Alfred Hitchcock effect that they talk about him doing in Psycho. So you've sat there as a viewer the whole time watching this murderer, do all these things. He kills the main character, the hero, the heroine is killed. Right. And then you see him drive the car to the lake or whatever body of water it was. And something happens with the car. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's like hard for him to get it into the water. And so and as the viewer, you're like, is he going to get it into the water in time? And some of the analysis that I've read about it is like Hitchcock is like pointing the finger back at you, like, look at you becoming complicit and hoping that he gets away with it. Partially thinking to yourself, maybe he'll win because you don't have anyone else to root for at this point. It's just you as the viewer and the killer. And so if that's the aspect that they're going for and pointing the finger back at the people watching, like, you sat there and watched this happen to these people. How did it make you feel? What do you think you should feel? And if that's the goal, then I say they accomplished it. Right? Because I wouldn't have really thought more deeply about it had I not saw this show. But when you talk about like the Mary thing, for example, I think the reason I can take that as funny is because I know it's never going to happen. Like there's no, in that particular world, by those rules, it's never going to happen, fam. So I can laugh at that because I know Mary would never do anything.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
We also know
there's a
that,
line.
But we also know, but here's the thing with that line, and the reason why I'm saying it's still problematic as the other is because we also know that the jokes with the uncles in the movies and comedy specials isn't necessarily going to go anywhere, but has gone so. But that,
yeah,
but
like
it's
we don't know.
But I'm saying, like, it's still a joke in a way that if you're watching it in the movie in the context or whatever, nothing is about to happen to somebody.
Right.
The problem
is that we know it does.
Is that it has, or that something has already happened, or and I always find this like a difficulty, and it has only been since I've married you, and it's just
darn
of a man gaining a woman's perspective more on things, and like just kind of being more open and growing, like, because like I said, I literally throw stuff off in the trash.
Yeah,
it's like literally I say literally so much, but does this story work for me? Right. Is literally it.
Yeah. Can you get past the, like, how much can you take to get through to the story?
Because it wasn't until we got, back together and we were talking about different spiritual things, and I started looking and I was like, I was able to watch this before, but now this bothers me.
Yeah.
Whereas it didn't bother me before, but it bothered me because it bothered you. And then I was like, well, why does it bother her if this is the viewpoint, right?
Right.
Because a lot of the times what's used is so many different themes. Mm-hmm. We were watching the Korean drama, The Goblin and Girl or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about that is
The Guardian Lonely God, I think it is. I think it's called.
But the thing about it is they meld their mythology with Christian like scriptures and all the stuff,
themes or something. Like,
and you get to this point and you're kind of sitting there and it's like, but it's not disrespectful.
No,
or at least it currently hasn't been. I don't know what the other episodes hold.
They told that line very well.
But that's the thing.
Yeah,
is a lot of the time, especially in this medium, there are so many lines that get told, and I think that it's very highlighted in this series. Because we have anime. I told you, about the first or second episode or whatever it was, a Goblin Slayer, and I was like, yo,
no, not doing it.
Like, there's a difference between clothes getting torn and the implied fact of what happens after this kind of thing and what happened in that second episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, you did not need that. Like, not a little bit. Like, I don't ever need to, and I've said this before, I don't ever need to see somebody earnestly broken all the time. I mean, sometimes it's necessary and you have to watch it, whether it's watching Roots, which I still haven't watched all of, but
I haven't seen it at all. You got one up on me.
I mean, I've just seen the things that I've seen.
Oh, okay.
Any whipping scene in any movie, like Passion of the Christ. any whipping in any, like there are certain things that I just don't have to ingest, right?
Right. To know what happened. Yeah.
I don't know. I halfway just want to read the light novel, man.
I told you, I think because the thing that would make me kind of pause at reading the light novel is because we read enough of ReZero, and because of how like much more they like in terms of description, but also in terms of setups and in terms of, you know, it, while it does touch you, I think deeper in a sense of like really connecting because you know more information, right? More than what your visual perceptors can pick up when you're watching it. Because you're getting like the inside character's thoughts and all that, right? Because of that, I'm like, I don't know if I can handle reading about what happened. Maybe if somebody just told me.
It just kind of depends because, like I said,
give me the clip notes.
We know what books and the differences are, and especially like with anime more than anything, you should take it as the same way that we take a Full Metal Alchemist and a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Two different representations.
Full Metal Alchemist was their own representation of the manga.
Yeah.
And Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is the manga.
Yeah.
So, you know, with light novels, I don't know how, well, even Is the Wrong to Pick Up Girls in the Dungeon, which is a lovely name to just have at the end of this long conversation that we've had.
Right.
Given that its tone is not the same.
Very different.
At all.
Very, very different.
The fan service is there, but definitely not in this. Well, actually, not the same. They are
it's
a lot
there,
lighter.
But it's lighter, and it's
like
not.
It's literally
not
only.
The story isn't centered around.
There are certain there are like 1, 2, 3 characters that they really Hestia in and of herself
is a walking fan service.
But yeah, but that's our little breakdown of this. We are going to talk op, but we're going to talk about it in the next episode.
Yeah,
because you know we had this long episode where we were talking about life and things, and you guys are probably like, "Oh my god!" But it's a conversation that must be had, guys.
And anime makes you
we
think
talk
life.
about all aspects. I don't want to. Whenever I talk about anime, I'm not just going to talk about the things that make me feel good. I don't want to do that because then that doesn't show the fullness of it. Because if I want you to watch something, I want you to understand what's going on. I want you to understand that there are things that it will make you think about that you need to be wary of. As you're watching with any medium, you know, you need to be thinking about that with anything that you're watching, but especially something that I want more people to watch. I want more people to take in. I want to be as informed as I can, and I want to be as respectful as possible because, like I said, I can only have the perspective of a male. It's the huge reason why I wanted you on the show to do the show with me is to not only anchor me in a sense of just growing, but also having a voice in this that does not often get heard as much as I think should be. Because that's not what, that's just not the medium or how they do it, but they don't have to do it because I'll do it. So anyway, we'll see you guys on the next one. Kirby says, hi. It's dangerous to go alone. So I choose you. Peace.